Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our virtual event and discussion about the need for robust mental health support in law enforcement. My name is Stephanie, and I will be helping to facilitate today's event. This event is hosted by California Southern University, which is a regionally accredited 100% online school that offers monthly course starts to help working professionals earn degrees and professional certifications. Before we do get started, I have a couple of notes to share. And as I'm doing this, please feel free to throw into the chat where you're connecting to us from today, if you're an enrolled learner at Cal Southern, and what brought you to our discussion today. First, please be aware that this event is being recorded and will be provided to participants and registrants after the event. Feel free to turn your camera off or on, whatever your preference would be there. As we're presenting and discussing, please add your questions to the chat. We're going to be monitoring the chat and using your comments and questions to help guide our discussion today. And I would like to now introduce Jeffrey Gross, MPA, who will be leading our discussion. Mr. Gross is the department chair for the School of Criminology and Criminal Justice at California Southern University. He is a retired city police officer and county investigator who brings nearly 25 years of experience as a teacher, trainer, and manager. Additionally, he has served our local Orange County, California community as an academic advisor to at-risk youth and as a gang reduction intervention partnership mentor. Jeff, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Stephanie. Welcome, everyone. It's an honor and privilege to be here with you today to discuss the emotional stress of law enforcement personnel. In recent discussion with learners and professors, there's been an alarming amount of police suicides. Anyone looking at the news can attest to this fact. Most recently, I had a conversation with a professor who shared with me that a good friend within the last 2 weeks, a on-duty officer had committed suicide. Due to this alarming epidemic, we thought initiating a more formal discussion in this manner would be beneficial. Like this professor, I myself deal with certain issues of mental health. To be perfectly candid and vulnerable to you guys, I've dealt with depression, I've dealt with PTSD, and in bringing these issues to the head, perhaps not only myself, but those of you out there can get a better handle on it, and perhaps we can make or initiate some real legislative change. The structure of this dialogue is going to be, I'm going to present the mental health support in law, the need for mental health support in law enforcement, and then the current state of mental health support in the field, what opportunities we see for expanding mental health support for law enforcement officers, and then opening it up for a forum, open dialogue forum where we'd love to hear your comments and questions. Next slide. So, according to the Law Enforcement Mental Health and Wellness Act, good mental and physical and psychological health is just as essential as good physical health for law enforcement officers to be effective in keeping our community and our communities safe from crime and violence. As any law enforcement officer knows, a premium is placed on physical well-being. However, we believe that emotional well-being, emotional resilience is vital to conducting law enforcement in the positive way that it needs to be. Next slide. The issues of emotional stress are having drastic effects on recruitment and retention. We're seeing a police force resignation rate increase to 14%. Officers who are leaving the force are doing so in the first 2 to 5 years of service. Obviously, current national controversies are impacting recruitment, not only recruitment, but also the way that officers are viewed today. And several of those officers are taking early retirement. That is prior to reaching their 20 years of service and pensions. All of this is largely due to the emotional stress and mental health issues. Next slide. Let's define emotional stress. What's causing it? Overworked and long hours, daily exposure to challenge and stressful situations, and a lack of support and manpower. by lack of support, mental health issues, emotional stress are still considered a stigma. You're still considered not a strong individual if you have these, if you're being treated for these mental health issues. And that's just not the case. The strongest person is someone who is both physically and mentally strong. Next slide, please. Mental health in the field. Unfortunately, law enforcement is still the go-to agency when dealing with those in the public who are having mental health issues. And even the law enforcement officers do receive some training in handling behavioral health issues. Really, there just are not enough mental health professionals on the force or tangentially used by the force to really have an impact. So here, an estimated 7 to 10% of police-citizen interactions involve a citizen with mental health disorders. Additionally, about 9 out of 10 first responders will be exposed to a traumatic event in their career, and around 1 in 3 of them will develop post-traumatic stress disorders. I would go so far to say a standard issue of their job duties is responding to traumatic events. And just as a race car is used to running at hundreds of miles per hour, this wear and tear on the engine causes cunning and baffling and powerful cracks in the engine block that cause mental and emotional stress. So it doesn't matter how tough you are, doesn't matter how strong you are, they are having mental health issues. Those who are experiencing mental health issues, let's look at some of the factors that are indicative. You're finding it difficult to connect with others. Are you isolating? Are you having struggle to regulate your emotions? And certainly during crisis situations, are you feeling narrowed perception, an increased anxiety and fearfulness above and beyond what would be normally acceptable? Are you feeling degraded cognitive abilities? Are you having, for myself personally, let me tell you, is the physical aspects of the job just came naturally to me. However, there are certain investigations I've been involved on that to this day, they lock up my engine block, and I just lock up. I can't explain it. It comes on like an earthquake. And before I could operate at 100 miles per hour, now anything, as that engine block heats up to 40, 50 on certain investigations, I can't focus, I get foggy brained, and panic attacks. Other things are errors in judgment and compromised performance. Unfortunately, what we're seeing in the public are situations of where officers overreact in a situation, whether just by the nature of the difficulty of the situation, of the that they're faced to make quick decisions with limited information, but where it's most difficult for the public to respond, or most difficult even for myself when I'm seeing some of these videos, is when you see an officer lose self-control. And that's really what we're seeing, a compromised performance, where we're watching these videos of excessive force and realizing the officer really didn't have to react in that way. And obviously he lost emotional control. Next slide.
So Jeff, this is one of our breaks for questions and comments.
Okay.
We haven't gotten anything in our chat log just yet, but I think that you painted such an excellent picture of that need for robust mental health support. There's a lot of stats, a lot of facts that you shared about the compromised performance. What really spoke to me is your analogy about the race car. And also, and I don't even know if you heard yourself say this, you said it comes on like an earthquake. Yeah. And I think anybody who knows what you're talking about immediately knew, like, you can feel it. Yeah. So I think that that's really profound. And so in lieu of having any questions or comments, we're going to put up a poll question for our audience to chime in on here. And we would like to know, when you consider the emotional stress that comes with working in law enforcement that Jeff just reviewed for us, do you feel that there are sufficient resources to support officers? So just go ahead and answer yes or no to that. And Jeff, as those start rolling in, would you mind sharing your perspective on that?
Yeah, can you just repeat the question one more time? It's not on my screen.
When you consider the emotional stress that comes with working in law enforcement, do you feel there are sufficient resources to support officers?
Every department offers health insurance. Um, and as we'll look later in the slide presentation, there are avenues to reach out for support when you're feeling that. However, as we originally mentioned, there's still a stigma to mental health. There's a premium is placed on physical toughness, but emotional resiliency, again, is a very difficult thing. And mental health is cunning, baffling, and powerful. So although things are rewarded, physical accomplishments are rewarded, making big busts are rewarded, saving a child's life are rewarded. Overcoming or being emotionally resilient isn't one of these things that can be readily viewed by everyone. So I'm going to make a policy recommendation later in the slide presentation. I feel that health insurance and going to a doctor or going to one of these tangential organizations are helpful. In fact, even vital. I do think that mental health can be improved in law enforcement, and I'm going to make a policy recommendation. I hope people get on board, and we can get something going.
Okay, so we're going to wrap up our poll there. And out of the 10 people who voted, 9 said that no, there are not sufficient resources, and we had one answer yes. And I do think that this is going to help us move right on into your next section. So I'm going to turn it back to you.
All right, and next slide. Okay, so what's the current state of mental health support in law enforcement? And next slide. So in January of 2018, the Law Enforcement Mental Health and Wellness Act was signed into law. It provided recognition that law enforcement agencies need and deserve support in their ongoing efforts to protect the mental health and well-being of their employees. This law funds development of knowledge, increase awareness of effective mental health strategies, and increase skills. Although this was signed into law, I think we are still waiting to see the fruitions of this law actually take effect. Next slide. Recognizing the signs. We highlighted the Milwaukee Police Department as one agency that is doing their best, or at least as a sample of this is what we're seeing from departments, is that they have initiated an administrative investigation management program that tracks 9 psychological indicators, and employees are flagged, and leadership is able to touch base with the person without, not in a disciplinary way, but a wellness check-in. Now, although this is indicative of what some departments are doing, I think any is going to have issues, is going to have issues. If I'm having, again, is due to the stigma that mental health still has among law enforcement, anytime I'm being flagged other than positive recognition is going to make me feel ostracized. It's going to make me feel weak. It's not, it's not the tough thing to do. And in fact, one of the bases for maintaining our credentials of being a law enforcement officer is being physically and emotionally capable of doing the job. So although this is indicative of what a department is doing, again, I think it has a lot to be desired. Next slide. Current support places. So where can you go? There are crisis hotlines, there are mental health checks, there are chaplaincy programs, peer mentoring programs, and some departments have the use of special psychologists. This is what's readily available. This is if you are feeling certain signs of depression or PTSD or anxiety, any of the mental health issues, I would urge you to reach out to one of these established organizations. Next slide. Where can resources and information be found? Other than what we just cited, other than the those department approved places, if you're finding yourself drinking too much or a loved one drinking too much, I would urge you to reach out to AA. They have a high success rate, and there happens to be a large law enforcement, even within AA, there are large parties of law enforcement officers that law enforcement officers can group together where outside citizens are not involved. This way, law enforcement officers can talk about their issues, can talk about their use without feeling the outside judgment of other of non-law enforcement citizens. Other than that, if you're still not comfortable with any of these organizations, I would please reach out to me personally at the university. I would be happy to talk about my own experience and work with you one-on-one. It would be my pleasure. I'd be honored to do so. Next slide. So we're going to break here again. So
yes. So we did get a question. We got one from Bonnie. I'm actually going to intentionally save that for the end of our talk for our open forum and Q&A. So Bonnie, we saw you. We're going to hold on to that one. Curtina, we got a question. It says, to be proactive, reduce stigma, and be supportive, can departments make it a requirement to check in quarterly with a mental health professional or employee assistance program? Jeff, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, it sounds like a great idea. It seems to be a little bit more in the realm of human resources. And the other, so here's my one is I love the idea. What's coming to mind is that across the nation, departments have been unable to enact requirements for even officers to meet physical wellness checks. Again, it's been brought up by health organizations is that once they're hired, let's say every year an officer has to do a physical fitness exam. But unfortunately, unions have blocked those type of requirements. So although I think it's a great idea, both for a physical fitness test as well as a mental health check-in, again, I think that is a great idea. And I think for your reasons for citing so are also absolutely right on the nail. I don't know if it's reasonable given the current political situation, but I think that's a great idea. A great idea.
Wonderful. So I do think that we're still going to run our second poll here. So Jeff, I'm going to read the question to you, and I'm interested in your opinion as we present it to our attendees. What do you see as the biggest roadblock for law enforcement accessing mental health support? And we gave our attendees 4 answers here. Number 1, the stigma of mental health issues as a roadblock, that it could negatively impact career or their career goals, that they are perhaps unaware of the available resources, or that there are gaps in agency or federal systems that create pitfalls.
Okay. Did you want me to weigh in on what I think my answer is?
Yeah, would you?
Sure. So it's a great question. Also, I think I could have checked off a couple of those. So obviously there's still a stigma. But I think what I would have gone with is, as I just mentioned a minute ago, is that one of the requirements for being certified as a law enforcement officer is that you are physically and emotionally healthy and capable of doing the job. So to admit, again, other than broken bones or bleeding, what your other officers can know and see as being an acceptable form, to have emotional or mental health issues, I think is considered, again, weak. And aside from, the stigma is, more importantly, is it would disqualify you from doing the job. And I think that's what a lot of officers are. Listen, I can't even seek treatment for this because if word gets out, I'm going to be a target and I'm not going to be able to do my job.
Well, and I think you're echoing what our audience feels too. So we had 11 people answer,
Yep.
and 8 of them said that they would worry that it would negatively impact their career or their career goals, and
Yep.
the other 3 answered in regards to the stigma that comes
Yep.
around mental
Yep.
health. But I think that you have some talking points around that as well. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it right back to you.
Yep. Okay, next slide. Okay, so the overall question is, what are the opportunities for expanding mental health support for law enforcement officers? Okay. Let's see, what new policies or legislation could help improve mental health benefits for law enforcement? Okay, so here's the issue is we know there's a stigma attached to mental health issues, to even seeking treatment, to even saying, hey, I'm having a problem dealing with this. And we know, listen, dealing with violent arrests, officer-involved shootings, fatal accidents, overdoses, all of these things are going to heat up your engine block and form cracks that are going to have a wear and tear on the person. We know there's a stigma involved. I can't do that much. I don't know how we change the stigma. However, in addressing the previous question on, that fear about losing, our job, is my recommendation is this, at least in California, and that's where the university is located. In California, the workers' comp or retirement disability law, there are certain physical medical presumptions that the officer, it is presumed to have been caused by work. That is, if you get a bloodborne pathogen, there's a presumption it's caused by, you're arresting someone and they had a needle and it stuck you. Certain heart trouble. If you have heart trouble and you need treatment or you need to file for disability, there is a presumption that it's caused by work. So the entire employment law shifts to being supportive of the officer. I believe it will have a huge impact on releasing the stigma and also having officers feel more supportive if mental health issues, if we can band together and you can reach out to your union reps, if they can reach out to your local elected officials, and we can work on getting mental health issues to be considered a presumptive medical condition, then I feel that we as officers will have that support to get the mental health treatment. And if it is so disabling, excuse me, and if it is so disabling to end someone's career, that they're not going to feel that they're just have no other alternatives. Like some of the officers who are committing suicide, they feel like they have no other alternatives. There's nothing else for them if they can't do this job. And we have to put an end to that. So that would be my policy recommendation is let's get together, reach out to your union reps, reach out to your elected officials, and we want mental health to be considered a presumptive medical condition so the officer is supported. So you don't have to, when you're filing a work comp claim or you're filing for treatment or filing for disability, that the law is more supportive of the officers and less supportive of, I don't want to say the agency at large, or that really take mental health issues as a serious issue that is directly a result of our work. So next slide. Okay, so again, some of these are maybe self-evident, but certain things to do, okay? Practice positive thinking, meditation, prayer, seek out social support, don't isolate, intentionally learn resiliency, reach out to your doctors, reach out to your mental health providers, and acknowledge that fear and vulnerability are healthy. It's the saying, I've got kids, so it's my kids know everything. As you grow more experience and more knowledgeable, you realize I don't know so much, and it's actually more intelligent and makes me a better person to reach out and say, hey, listen, I need to learn more about this, or I need to get better at this. And it's managing healthy sleep habits, healthy eating habits, healthy exercise habits. Things not to do. again, these are self-evident, but let's just go over them, is not to drink alcohol excessively. Alcohol is a depressant. Even though it may give temporary relief of certain symptoms, of cutting ourselves off from rethinking about that violent arrest that just happened, rethinking about that fatality, that car accident, there are rebound effects that are much worse once we sober up. Don't continue the negative feelings through continuous venting. Is we need to break that cycle. I mean, I don't think a shift went by where I didn't rehash and go over my actions of every single thing that happened during that shift, going, could I have done that better? What did I do wrong here? What can I improve? And then again, don't isolate yourself. Isolating is one of the indicative signs that we're kind of crumbling inward, and they use this term of a black hole, and that's what it is. We're falling inward on ourselves, and what it is our secrets will kill us. And I don't mean, I mean secrets of not sharing. Hey, listen, I'm hurting here, or that really bothered me, or I need help here. Reach out. Do not isolate yourself. It's not healthy. And next slide.
So actually, Jeff, our next slide opens us up into our open forum and Q&A, but we had a audience member, Bryson, who asked a question regarding this. So I'm going to leave this information up, and I just want to know if there's anything you want to add. Bryson says, it seems that while resources are a good thing, the average individual doesn't want to share what they're going through. Since we can't force someone to share what they're going through, could we equip them to deal with it better?
Yeah, God, I'm glad. I really appreciate the question. I think that was, your question is indicative of why we're having this presentation, is we want to initiate a conversation. Fortunately, a lot of the professors here at Cal Southern, they have experience not only with law enforcement, but we also have really experienced behavioral health professors who work with law enforcement. That question really could be better answered by one of our professors who have both the behavioral health and law enforcement experience. So again, I would really hold that, and perhaps we do something like this again, and we have one of our behavioral health mentors on, and that be directed towards someone like that. I'm just sharing some of my own experience, and it's when I isolate, when I don't feel comfortable about sharing these things, that it seems to cycle downward. So, but really, it's a great question. I really think, but one of our behavioral health professionals would be the best to answer.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jeff. Okay. So we are into our open forum Q&A. So I know we have a question up on the screen, but we do have a couple that came to the chat log while you were talking that I would like to start with. So first from Bonnie, we have, do you see a way that regular supportive community members can help care for our police officers in ways that would benefit them? So this came in while we were talking about agency resources. And so I guess, is there anything that you would speak to as far as an average community member?
Is community-oriented policing. It is a great concept that has, unfortunately, this last couple of years, due to socio-political issues, the relationship between the community and law enforcement, it's been fractured. There's a lot of distrust, and that disconnect between law enforcement and the community, it's evident. The public is feeling it, and law enforcement officers are feeling it. I feel like the majority of law enforcement officers that myself and those I've worked with, we weren't always law enforcement officers. We are husband and wives and mothers and sons, and we have kids, and we're members of the community also. I happen to love, is my daughter's got me into TikTok, and I love some of these these law enforcement police TikToks where the law enforcement officer gets, is in the city and starts playing basketball with the guys, or certain charitable events, and or really reaching out. That's really enacting what community-oriented policing is really about. And I feel if we can get back to that, then the community members can also feel good about feeling good about, hey, saying thank you to a police officer. Two just recent ones come to mind. Is this officer was eating in a Denny's, and this little kid wanted to come up and just give him a hug and say thank you, and it was just a really sweet thing. And then I remember a few years back, there were some snipers. I forget what locale, but there was some snipers were shooting at law enforcement officers, and it was a female law enforcement officer was filling up her gas tank at a gas station, and some members of the public came to stand around her, and she was like, "Wait, what's going on?" She's like, "Listen, we're just going to stand here and keep watch while you're filling your tank." And it was little things like that I wish we could get back to. It's going to take really concentrated effort of both law enforcement to work on making more of those connections to the public, so the connection feels more comfortable around us, and then we can earn that love back. So
that makes a lot of sense. We also had an additional question from Bryson. He asked, how much of a training academy, ranging from 3 months to even a year, is dedicated to teaching officers how to cope with a significant event? Do you know that?
So I'll tell you I think, so I'm going to interpret that two ways. So there's two things. So typically in California, the major academies are 6 months. They have added, I believe it's like 36 hours of additional training in dealing with those having behavioral health issues. But I don't think that's specifically, you're asking in like mentally, how do you deal with and I mean, now we're going back 20, 30 years from when I came on, and it was zero. It was zero. It was part of, they would show video, and you would have speakers of law enforcement officers who share their experience of going through a deadly shooting or the death of a child. And it was the officer, by standing up there, sharing their story, was the example. But that was pretty much the extent of the emotional resiliency training. I think the bigger picture is in, typically stress academies, they're paramilitary. So they come out from day one yelling and screaming at you. It's all typically about emotional resilience, but it's to be tough. It's to be tough. It's to be strong. It's to be pushed through. It's to persevere. It's to overcome a situation. But I think, again, as we mentioned several times, mental health issues, they're cunning and baffling and powerful. And I'm not aware of any academy giving that emotional resiliency training other than the paramilitary type overall yelling and screaming at you. So I don't think that's doing doing it justice. Again, like one of my own partners who, again, you don't get tougher than this guy. He was a former vet. He was on the SWAT team. He was a super stud. You don't get tougher than this guy. But for some reason, the emotional situation he was dealing with, he felt he had no other option other than to take his own life. And so that toughness training, that's not addressing what I think we're talking about.
We are also joined today by Dr. Walt Whitman, which is, one of our faculty. He asks, in one of the very small local communities in my area, there is an effort to establish peer support groups to overcome the blue line effect. And he wants to know if you, Jeff, have seen any effect of this type of approach to mutual mental health support in your area.
Unfortunately, I haven't seen it. is I know certain departments in our area are linking with, countywide. They have PERT teams and CERT teams and psychological teams, where the officers, can at least try and seek assistance dealing with behavioral health officers. But specifically to what Dr. Whitman's is addressing, I haven't seen it in this area. But again, is this is the value of some of our California Southern professors, is they are so knowledgeable. And again, I would love to be in on one of his lectures and hear his thoughts and opinions and as he shares with some of our officers. Oh, I see his comment there. Sorry, yeah.
That's wonderful. Okay, so that was all that we had come in through the questions. So I am gonna, we do have a little bit of time left for this section. So I would love to open it up to the question that we have on the screen here. As our audience kind of forms their thoughts and opinions around this, feel free to enter them into the question or the chat feature there, and we'll bring them to Jeff as they come in. But Jeff, if you wouldn't mind getting us started here, what opportunities do you see for individuals or departments to increase mental health support to law enforcement personnel?
Well, I think some of the comments, I really appreciate the interaction. I really appreciate some of the comments. I think some of the suggestions have been great. Like, listen, let's add, in the initial training, let's add resiliency training, not toughness training, but listen, listen, you're dealing with, in my own academy, I remember they had some kids were playing with a gun and was shot, and we're listening as the call is coming through, and you can hear the last breaths of the child being taken, the last final exit, and everyone in the room is crying. Okay. And I think the comment was, listen, this is the stuff you're going to have to be prepared to handle. But so let's add sections of like, listen, these are, let's add resiliency training, like real resiliency training led by a behavioral health specialist. Let's add, listen, is not only to be tough, but also flexible, emotionally resilient. I think that was a great suggestion. The other suggestion I loved was listen, have, quarterly or even yearly mental health checkup. I mean, listen, every department I know, you have to pass a psychological exam to be qualified to continue on in the process. I thought that was another great suggestion, is you have a yearly mental health checkup where you're going in and a psychologist or specialist is reviewing the year you've had, your physical health and your mental health, and you get to sign off, and you also have that opportunity where maybe it wasn't your choice, but listen, you're in here with this mental health professional now. Hey, listen, I might as well bring this up and talk about this. And I thought we have great suggestions. And then lastly was my own policy recommendation on, let's move to have mental health issues considered a presumptive, so officers have that workers' comp support.
I think I can see it all kind of coming together as almost like this fully well-rounded ideas for a solution to this. And so at this point, we also have Rafi from our admissions department available to answer any questions that anybody should have about enrolling at California Southern University. But before we talk more about that, Jeff, would you mind wrapping this out here and closing things up?
Sure, my pleasure. First of all, I want to thank everyone for joining today in this discussion. I want to say to those of you who are like me, current law enforcement, former law enforcement, who struggle with depression and PTSD and anxiety. Like I said, I'm right there with you. There are certain investigations right now that lock up my engine block. For me, I found that one of the most important things you need to realize is that you're not alone. You're not the first one going through this, and you're not going to be the last one going through it. And oftentimes it happens, you just feel like you're alone, and you feel like it's only you and you're in your bubble, and you just wish you had someone in that moment who could just pull you aside and say, hey, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. You just got to remember to hold on to fundamental qualities of faith and hope. Reach out to these established organizations or reach out to me personally. And on the other side of your pain, there is something good. Thank you very much for joining me today.
Thank you, Jeff. And before I close out, I do want to give credit here. We have the suggestion of group therapy where participants can share what they're going through. And we also had a comment, again, come in from Curtina. Mental health professionals could offer pro bono services, run groups for law enforcement officers regarding mindfulness, emotional well-being, et cetera. I think that's some wonderful suggestions.
I think they're great. And I'll just reiterate, there's a lot of the behavioral health professionals here at Cal Southern do have experience with working with law enforcement agencies. And I've found them to be a great resource.
Thank you, Jeff. Okay, we are going to pass it off to Rafi to talk about criminology and criminal justice at Cal Southern. Rafi?
Thank you so much. Again, my name's Rafi Rabanian. I'm a member of the admissions team, and it's an honor to speak on behalf of the admissions department today. Just wanted to provide some quick highlights on our related programs. For example, our Bachelor of Science in Criminal Justice, it's a 120 credit degree program. Program combines foundational courses such as legal procedure and criminal law with specialized topics such as digital crime, forensic psychology, terrorism response, substance abuse, white collar crime, among other subjects. Up to 90 credits can be accepted and transferred into this program, which will certainly have you well on your way. And then we also offer the Master of Science in Law Enforcement Executive Leadership, which is a 36 credit master's program. The program is designed to provide law enforcement professionals with the specialized knowledge and practical skills required to rise to leadership positions in a 21st century law enforcement organization. Now, with this program, up to 6 credits can be accepted and transfer. And as with all of our programs here at Cal Southern, there are no specific login times or group projects which will enable you to complete the coursework in times that are convenient within your schedule. For those interested, I encourage you to check us out online. It's www.calsouthern.edu. Myself or another member of the admissions team, would be happy to assist during the admissions process, answer any questions that you may have. And again, I thank you so much for the opportunity to speak with you all today. Thank you so much. Passing it back to you, Stephanie.
Thank you, Rafi. Yes. And in addition to that, we are also having a virtual open house with the School of Criminology and Criminal Justice. And that will be Thursday, January 20th. So if you're interested, please email the address that you see there, and we'll be sending out more details in the email that we're wrapping up and sending out the link to this recording for. Again, we would like to say thank you so much for joining us. We had such a wonderful discussion today. Thank you, Jeff, for all of your wonderful insight and professional expertise. And with that, we're going to go ahead and conclude today's virtual presentation.